Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Divine Justice Ministry with lawyer, professor, and minister, the Rev Anthony Suarez, as your host. The crossroads between law, the Constitution, and religion, where the First Amendment is always the first topic of discussion. Welcome, everybody. This is Tony Suarez, Reverend Tony Suarez, and with me is Steve Alcino, my co-host on Divine Justice, also on Raw Talk, which we do on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. We're going to be bringing this Divine Justice podcast, and as introduction gave you an idea, using that background that I have as both community activist and politician and professor as well as a minister, bringing the issues to the front for us to discuss. In a format that is about learning, not confrontational. I mean, things are going to be confrontational anyway, no matter what we do, simply because of the topics that we'll be discussing. But we will not put down anybody who has a different point of view. We will explain, and hopefully persons can come up with the justification for what their positions are, and gladly we'll discuss all the points of view. Divine Justice Ministry is a concept, an idea that I had in order to combine the things that I have studied over my lifetime, which is both the law, and as a law professor, going deep dive into the law, understanding what purposes of each law, and of course, as a legislator myself, having been in that seat of writing law and helping others write law. And as a minister, what happens when we start crossing the law with faith, when we start beginning to legislate from a moral standard of a particular religion? And that is what the First Amendment is all about. So I hope that we can have an interesting conversation. There's so much to write about and so much to talk about. I'm hoping that you'll be interested in this conversation. Every week we'll have new guests, we'll have new conversations, a new topic, and I'm hoping that in fact comes out well. So Steve, once again, thank you and for coming to join me on this journey as we begin to describe what is divine justice, what is justice, and how does that apply in the real world when it comes to either making legislation or making determinations in your own life. Thanks. You want to make a comment?
I'm sorry, Anthony. I've been dealing with a little bit of technical issues in my side,
Okay.
but I apologize for that. Yeah, I was having technical issues,
All right.
but
Well,
we're good.
listen,
We're good now.
I was just describing what the purpose of the divine justice is all about, why I thought of it, as because of my background, as we showed in the introduction, that I have a varied background, and I want to be able to talk to people about how their faith and their religion, or even lack of faith, right, affects how they live their life and how our courts operate and how our legislature operates. So there are going to be a lot of issues. Today we're going to be lightly touching one of the issues that has to do with education, public education. But you can imagine if you decide, for example, the legislature says, okay, let's give public money, tax money, and we'll give it to religious schools. Well, does a Baptist school get it? Does a Catholic school get it? Only them? Or does everyone get it? And if everyone gets it, do the Muslims get it? Do the people who believe in Satan, do they get public money? Because everybody has to be treated equally, right? So then you open the door as to what prayers in the classroom. What prayers in the classroom? Is it a Christian prayer? Is it a Jewish prayer? Is it a Muslim prayer? Do we have prayers all day long? The Muslims pray 3 times a day. So are we gonna have that? So the questions are, as we go through the religious and faith-based questions, we'll apply them to the law, and then we'll apply them to society. And then when you add that to Raw Talk and to the Bar Association conversations that we're studying on Thursdays, I think you're going to have every single day a different aspect of some kind of issue that's going to make it very, very interesting for us to discuss. What do you think?
Well, I think um, that's a serious subject, my friend. Like I told you yesterday on Raw Talk, my father told me never to talk about politics and religion, and here we are. And the way you putting it out, and the way you are trying to bring this divine justice ministry idea into the life, into what we do here, it's gonna it's gonna create. There's already a lot of controversy when it comes to religion. Um, there's a lot of controversy also when religion and law get together.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a subject that I can only talk by faith for what I believe in when it comes to that. Because we have to follow man law, but we also have to follow God's law. So yeah.
This is what the purpose of this conversation is, to have just that. That's why I think that you are actually perfect for me, in a sense of we doing this thing together, because when you bring your conversations to me, we'll be able to discuss from post perspective. I can talk about law, and you can talk about it how you feel, and how you feel is how a lot of people out there are going to feel, right? And I think that's really, really important to get that aspect, because that's what's going to make interesting conversation. And we'll talk about that. This is being done live on Facebook, so you should be able to make comments if you like, and you want to. You probably going to disagree with me most of the time. Okay, I'll tell you that most of the time. Now we can have discussion. I'll tell you what the law is and how I perceive the law to be. Right? How Supreme Court decisions. And we're going to begin. I'm going to touch some about that later. And I wrote a book about this whole topic, which I'm going to introduce later on in this conversation. But so I consider myself an expert on the law. But that doesn't mean the law is always that way, because, you have 9 Supreme Court justices, right? 5 say the law is one way, and 4 of them say the law is another way. So, hey, what the law is, as I tell my law students, hey, I don't know what the law is. It is whatever 5 justices in the Supreme Court says it is. So, if you were with the 4, you may be right with those 4. But you're wrong with the 5. And the way our system is set up, the law is going to be interpreted
Let
on
me
the majority of the Supreme Court.
let me piggyback on that.
Uh-huh.
Don't the judges and all 9 have to follow the law and the Constitution as it's written, or as it is interpreted? Which one is it?
That's a great actually question. Okay, see, because it's judicial philosophy. It's called judicial philosophy. There's some judges who are what's called strict constructionists, right? And they say we must interpret the Constitution and all particular laws as originally written by the founders, and how using the words as understood by the founders.
Mm-hmm.
There are others, judges, who say, wait a minute, we cannot use language that was used 200 years ago in establishing our Constitution. We have to use the words as they are used today in order to interpret what the Constitution means and what the laws as applied by the Constitution mean. So we have to be of a modern by looking at the words in modern context. Depending on how you look in your judicial philosophy is how you may come down on decisions all the time. So that question that you just asked is an essential question. I deal with that in my book, and we will be dealing with that constantly here in the show, discussing about how do you look at the law, how do you read the law. So the example I use often at the school is I will say, what is equal? Right? What is equal? It sounds simple. Equal is equal. Yeah, what are you talking about? Well, at one time, in the South, here in Florida and other states in the South, you had schools for black kids and you had schools for white kids. And they said the schools are equal. They're getting the same education. They're getting the same books. It's equal. But so therefore, the southern states felt justified in having segregated schools because they were equal, unless you interpret the word equal differently. If you interpret the word equal to mean by separation alone, you are creating an inequality. You're creating a separateness, a concept of separateness, both in the white kids and in the black kids. Therefore, that is not equal because you're bringing them up to believing they are unequal. They cannot even be with each other. And therefore, if you interpret the word equal that way, then you're going to say to the southern states, you're not equal. You don't have, even though you have the schools, same amount of money for each school, they're not equal because the kids are not together, and that creates a separateness and unequalness. Is that clear to you?
Yes and no. Okay, because you know, you got man law and you got God's law. It's just, to me, it's I see things from a different perspective.
Right.
We all created equal, and it doesn't matter what the color of your skin is. You know, there shouldn't be no, like it was that you had just mentioned, the segregation. But I guess it's part of our history.
Right.
Is it right? No. Was it right? No. Who gave them the right to decide that, because your skin was another color, now you gotta be my slave back in the days. You follow me? It just doesn't make sense to me because I don't. That's retro, but we live in hard times.
We never said that this was going to be easy. When I teach at the law school, it's not easy. And what we're trying to do here, what I'm trying to do here, is bring to light religious issues in a legal context. That's not going to be easy, and we may not agree. There are points we're just not going to agree. That's okay. I'm okay with that. All right. I just want to explain what the basis are so that you and the people who are listening understand what the basis is, and then we can take it from there. And you can vote your conscience, and that's what's good about a democracy. Go ahead.
Okay, so let me throw this one at you. I believe, okay, that based on what I have read, that religion was very conveniently invented by man to capitalize.
Well,
okay, when Christ came to the world, he didn't preach religion. He said, "Do as I do. Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar,
right,
and to God what belongs to God." So you have big churches, you got little churches, you got mega churches, you got pastors going out there and asking for donations so they can buy themselves private jets because they cannot travel with the regular or average guy. Should I continue?
Well, that's a whole nother show. Yeah, I mean, we could go on all day with that particular issue, and I think there's something that legitimately that we can discuss as to what is religion. In ministry school, when I was in ministry school, I studied several religions. The religions of the world. It's called world religions. Now, they're not deep dives into all the religions, but certainly enough of looking at the Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, Jewish, and Sikhs, different religions from around the world, that you study to try to understand how they got to their theology and how they got to their cosmology. So I enjoy that kind of conversation, and we can discuss it, where religion comes from. And that, as you indicate, pastors going around, they go to jail and they read the Bible 5 times, and all of a sudden Jesus is talking to them. So now they go out and they make it a business. I mean, that happens. But there, of course, are people who are very sincere in the delivery of what they view what their faith is telling them, and what they feel, what the universe, what their spirit, what their God is speaking to them. And so we can get to that. The question that we always have to look at is, how do we run a society, a civilization, that I can respect Steve's point of view while you respect Tony's point of view, and not impose your religious views on me, or I imposing my religious view on you, because then that doesn't become a democracy. That becomes an autocracy, or a dictatorship of the majority. And our Constitution was specifically written to protect rights of minorities. So the First Amendment, which is what we're going to be looking at in detail on every single podcast, says, and they wrote it, it's the First Amendment, right? It's the First Amendment to the Constitution. So that was important, that Congress, and through the 14th Amendment, the states can't do either. But Congress may not write any law that imposes religion or impedes the freedom to exercise your religion. Okay, so they cannot write a law that imposes a religion, nor can they write laws that would impinge your right to free exercise of your religion. Those 2 clauses cause lots of gaps, and we're going to be discussing all those things during the conversation. I have a lot of topics that we can discuss. Again, I asked all those who are listening to understand that this is not going to be a pro-Christian, not going to be pro-Muslim. It is going to be a discussion of the law and about religion, all right? And how we use the law in your politics, and how you use the law when you judge other people. So, I actually to join in, write some notes. Sydney, we have the ability to look at notes, and I can answer your questions. I'm very pleased to do something like that, and to try to enjoy the broadcast, which is what I'm hoping to do, discuss and stimulate some conversation in there. Let me, Steve, if you don't care, I would like to introduce a little thing about a book that I wrote, okay? It's an introduction. I discussed to you that I am a law professor, and I teach other topics. I teach voting rights and legislation process. But one of my interests, of course, being a minister as well, is the issue of the First Amendment. So I decided I would write a book about the First Amendment and what it means to us. So let me introduce you to a little introduction about the book.
Society. It is the beacon that guides our path through the darkest of times. But to uphold this sacred principle, citizens must understand how and why judges make their decisions. In the pursuit of this understanding, one man has emerged as a beacon of knowledge. Former legislator, esteemed professor, and now a minister of great reverence, Reverend Dr. Anthony Suarez stands at the crossroads where religion and law converge. His profound wisdom and insight have birthed a powerful book, one that is designed to guide you through the labyrinth of rulemaking and court decisions. This book, A Compass for Our Troubled Times, has the power to restore our faith in the very foundation of our democracy. For without trust in our courts, the looming specter of anarchy darkens our horizons. Witness the clash of the Supreme Court, the embodiment of justice, with the venerable structures of faith and worship. In these trying times, Reverend Dr. Anthony Suarez's book is not just a beacon of hope. It is a lifeline that can guide us towards understanding, unity, and the preservation of our democracy. Let us embark on this journey together as we seek to restore trust, uphold justice, and reaffirm the values that make our society strong. Because when faith in our courts is lost, the very essence of democracy is at stake.
Yeah, that's it, right? That's the topic of this book, and to be basically much of the topic and conversations that you and I will be having over the coming weeks. And what I hope to be able to do, Steve, is to invite other ministers from different faiths, Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, Sikhs, and whomever I can get to join us to discuss not just what their faith is about, but to discuss how legislation affects their faith. All right. And so I want to give you in the next half hour that we have, I'd like to discuss we'll have a whole show on this. Okay. So, but let's discuss how we're going to introduce it so people understand what we're talking about. So let me show you something here. It feels good to be yourself. This is a book about gender identity. Let me give you the background on this, okay? In the state of Arkansas, I think it's Arkansas. Let's just play the state. Doesn't make a difference because the United States Supreme Court makes a decision, okay? But in this particular state, they passed a rule, the school board, that said that they were going to introduce tolerance in the public schools. The feeling of tolerance, acceptance, right? So what they did is they required all schools to have a segment that would introduce this particular book and a curriculum about acceptance of people of different gay people, transgender people, adoption by gay people of children. And the whole point of it was to teach tolerance in the public schools. Everyone was required to listen to this, right? A group of Christians, Muslims, and Jews, parents sued in the federal court, saying, you are impeding my religious views. You're forcing my children to listen to your point of view about homosexuality when my point of view is different than your point of view. I don't want my children listening to that. That is what went up to the United States Supreme Court to determine whether or not the decision by the state school board to force children of non-participating parents, right? People who are being forced to, they're not doing this voluntarily, they're being forced to do this. Yeah. Whether or not this rule by the school board impinged on their right of free expression and the freedom of religion by imposing some other point of view. That was the question before the Supreme Court. So now that I have that, what do you think about that, Steve?
Well, can you hear me?
I hear you perfectly.
Good. My dear friend, you have gotten into a subject in this book right here, which I got mixed feelings about, because we learn in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I come from a generation, and so do you, where, we played in the street. We knew what kid was different. We didn't make fun or point it out. We did not bully, we did not point out differences. We did not, at least me. I'm talking about me.
Okay, just talk about you, because you can't. I was raised in the Bronx, okay, and in the Bronx, bullying all the time.
No, I was born in the Bronx, raised in Brooklyn,
mm-hmm.
And I understand where you're coming from, and trust me, I got the scars.
Okay.
But I always try to do the right thing, you know. Regardless, yeah, there was guys, in the neighborhood. Look, Little Norton, is gay,
Right.
and
They
dude,
didn't use the word gay. Okay. They use other words,
of
right?
course they use other words.
Okay.
We are
Okay.
in YouTube. Wait a minute,
Right.
I could use that, but no, I'm gonna keep it clean.
Right.
But you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
There was bullying. There's always been kids that are different. There was kids that had mannerisms. That
Mhm.
didn't mean that they were gay
Mhm.
or they were attracted to males or vice versa with the girls. You know, I remember playing baseball when I was a kid.
Mhm.
We had a girl in the team, Lychee, we called her, Lisi, sorry. This girl was a tomboy.
Mhm.
She was strong. She kicked butt too.
All right.
Everybody thought she was gay. Well, she wasn't. She just liked to play ball. When
All right.
she turned into the teenage years and above,
Mhm.
she turned out to be one of the most, if not the most beautiful girl in the whole neighborhood. And every baseball player that played with her or against her team wanted to date Lissy
All
in
right.
the little, parties in the carports. Remember those?
Yeah.
They don't do those no more. So it was a total different. Nowadays, you have, uh, for what I heard over the grapevine, trans reading books to kids in elementary school.
Mhm.
Um, what do you say about that?
Well, let me tell you this because you left out part of the history. All right, back in our day, Steve. All right, where if you were gay, you were ostracized. You were
Oh
made
yeah.
not just call you bully. In my own family, I had gay cousins, and those gay cousins. One of them ended up moving to California because he couldn't stand the criticism of his own family that he was not accepted by. One
Oh
of my cousins killed himself. All right,
wow.
because he was gay, and is not accepted by his father. So that was the kind of intolerance that was had in our neighborhoods, and it came from the people who call themselves Christians in my family. Right, they were always a Catholic, and yet they treated everybody, people who were gay, with lots of intolerance. So that is part of
Yeah,
the.
that was not accepted.
So over the time, in order to today, we don't. You could be gay and you don't necessarily be proud of it. Although some people are proud and they go march in the parades and stuff like that. But for the most part, it's still a negative thing. You don't. If you're gay, keep it to yourself, and that kind of stuff. Um, so the question is, where do we teach tolerance? Do we teach tolerance at your home? Do we teach tolerance at school? Do we teach tolerance at the workplace? And if you want to be intolerant, let's say you want to be a racist, should we allow that in public schools? Oh, we're going to have black schools and white schools because that's your personal religious point of view. How
No, listen.
far do we go in order to permit you to be intolerant, or as opposed to forcing you to be tolerant? So the question
Home,
that is that.
home is the first teaching school. Okay. Then we
Right.
go to school and we learn what we need to learn in school. But home should be where the seeds are planted. And usually that's how it works. Seeds are planted at home. If you're prejudiced, you're going to pass that on to your children. If you live through prejudice, saw what it does, learn from it, then your teaching will be totally different towards your children. Okay. We live in a
Is that okay?
society,
Is that
huh?
okay? Can you teach your children to be prejudiced? And is that okay?
Definitely not okay.
Say again?
Definitely, to me, it's not okay.
Okay.
Definitely not. I'm going to tell you why. Because nobody has the right to make anybody feel less than. Okay, nobody has that right. You know, I have a saying: to the world, you might be the one person, okay, and nobody cares. But to somebody, you are going to be the world. You know, you are their world. So none of us have the right to make anyone feel less than, regardless of what that other individual is. You know, we don't condemn the person. We can, you can't condemn a person. You condemn the actions,
Mhm.
or what that person believes and says, and you don't condemn them. You just accept them because that's who that individual is.
The argument by the parents who brought the lawsuit, I told the Christian family, the Muslim family, and the Jewish family that brought the lawsuit, said, "You're
Okay.
forcing my children to listen to a point of view that is not my religious point of view, and therefore you're violating my constitutional right to raise my children my way." The argument of the public schools was, we're not stopping you from teaching the children whatever you want. You can teach them whatever you want at home, but we're going to teach you as a public policy. There is no discrimination against gays or transgender people or people who live with a different identity. That's what we're doing. We're not forcing you to teach whatever. You can teach whatever you want, but we're forcing a public policy of tolerance. What do you
I
think
don't
about
know, Tony. When I was a kid,
that?
you started the day in school with your pledges to the legion to the flag.
Mhm.
You prayed, and here we start. First class was religion.
Right.
You know, that was my days. So okay, I got expelled. You know, I was a trouble kid, but that's what we did. And we would go also to a service in the classroom, and did we take the different classrooms to the service? Of
Yeah.
course, that's Catholic school,
Yeah.
you know. But
There's cases on that. By the way, when I was going in public school in the Bronx, we would have every Wednesday would be assembly, and we had to wear a white shirt for assembly, right?
yeah,
And then it would start the assembly with a reading from the Old Testament and a reading from the New Testament, all right? Now, and that was the subject of a lawsuit in New York State because there was a father of a child who is an atheist. And he didn't want to have his child standing up there praying with other kids because it was, or sitting down and not praying, and then they made fun of him for not being with everybody else, right? So he brought a lawsuit, thinking that this is a violation of his rights to be free from religion, and he won that case. So as a result of that, they no longer read any prayers in the public schools in New York. But then that is still a controversy here today, right? Into the United States, prayers in the classroom. That is another topic for another day, and I'll prepare for that. But I just bring that up because you brought it up. Go ahead.
yeah. Well, I think that this is a broad subject. Um, my way of thinking. I believe that just because I had a rough upbringing doesn't mean that I have to be rough with others. You learn, and the fact that we are talking about this gender identity and the law and the cases that have been brought
Right.
at the court and the different um, judgments, we are at a different level,
Mhm.
and this is a subject that it has to be meticulously spoken with the knowledge of the law, but also the knowledge of the Bible, or whatever, and then again, you know, you have all the different religions with all the different books. It's just it's a lot, bro.
I really hope that people are watching this and that we can get some comments. We have the ability to get your comments, and we'd love to be able to get your comments on this because the purpose of this conversation is not to embarrass anybody or put anybody down. It is to discuss something, right? There on this things, as I indicated earlier, the decision on this particular case was 5-4. All right. And I'll discuss what the decision of the court is later as we get toward the end of the broadcast. But it was 5-4. So how could you be wrong if you're either with the majority or you're with the minority? In the case of minority, the difference was 1 vote. Okay, so there's no way of being wrong. It's just how you feel about it and how we can discuss it. I think it's important to discuss. One of the things when I was a politician that really bothered me, Steve, was that if you're a Democrat, every Democrat idea has to be good and every Republican idea has to be bad. That's not true.
That's not true.
There's some good Republican ideas and there's some good Democratic ideas and there's some bad Democratic ideas and there's some bad Republican.
Bad Republican ideas.
So we can, if we have ability to discuss things, if we're ability to talk about things, we're more likely to reach an agreement. And the purpose of government, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Right? That was the purpose of the Declaration of Independence. What is the purpose of government? To allow people to live their life and to enjoy their life and to be free. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is the purpose of government. Not to divide us, not to argue with each other, not to hate each other, not to start a war with each other, all of which has happened in this country and, of course, all around the world. And it only gets resolved if we talk. And so we have ideas, and I don't mind talking controversial ideas. I love talking about controversial ideas, whether it's Republican, Democrats, or whether it's Christian, non-Christian, religious or non. I do not run away from that, as you indicated in your opening statement that you were taught, don't talk politics and don't talk religion, right? I just do the opposite. I want to do that. And I think that that's important for us to do. Go ahead.
Well, I do agree with you. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. There is a certain, how do I say this? These are delicate subjects.
Mm-hmm.
My problem is how these Superior Court judges are splitting based on what if they're not basing themselves in the Constitution. And that's where I'm like, okay, well, they're using these loopholes to go against each other based on what they believe instead of following the Constitution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and that is legitimate. That is absolutely legitimate. But I indicated to you, and we can discuss this. I have a video clip, and part of one of the classes that I teach, right? I talk about judicial philosophy. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a note, and I'm going to bring this up at our next week about judicial philosophy to discuss that precisely how judges make decisions. And I think that is definitely a legitimate question. It's something that when you become a Supreme Court justice, that's the one important question that all the senators always ask the candidates. How do you interpret the law? Are you a strict constructionist or you are a progressive? That's the one question, number one question that they ask. So what you ask is legitimate. I think everybody who listens to us has the right to question that. And then you also have the right to decide which philosophy you think is the correct philosophy. And I think that's important.
Oh man, that sounds like a lot. Because now we are making something that could have been so simple Now we turn it in and turn it into something that's going to be very complicated.
Well, it's not simple, but but I think it's going to be fun, Steve. And I think that I introduced this topic. I think we'll come back to it. And so, I want to move on. We're going to end this broadcast today, and so that we have touch base with what the divine justice all about. Divine justice. This conversation will always be some topic that has a crossroads between law and faith, and how it is applied in government through law. And I think it's going to be fun. I'm hoping that it is fun. I hope that you enjoy this conversation, and make sure that if you want to, make sure that you join us. It'll be every Wednesday at 10 o'clock in the morning, and we'll see you then. Anything else, Steve, before we say
tomorrow at
Oh,
10
yeah.
o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, tomorrow morning we will be discussing bar association issues, and that topic is about. We're doing a series of conversations, Steve and I. One is Tuesdays is we call it Raw Talk, which is pure politics. All right, we'll be having inviting politicians, and we'll discuss all sorts of issues. Almost no limitations on the conversation. On Wednesdays will be the divine justice. We'll be talking about this. I was just faith and the law, and then on Thursdays we're having a segment which is being sponsored by the National Puerto Rican Bar Association Conference, which is a conglomeration of the bar associations of Puerto Rico, New York, Florida, and Illinois. And we'll be interviewing the presidents of those organizations, the professors of law, talking about Puerto Rico principally, and talk about the territorial clause, what it means, the status of Puerto Rico, where's it going, how's it going, why is it there? It's going to be a fascinating topic. I spent a career doing that as well, and we will be having that every Thursday. So we have a chock full of stuff that we're doing. Hopefully we're bringing information to our community, and that you enjoy it. And I know that Steve and I are going to be enjoying it.
Tony, tell the people where they can get your book.
Yeah, well, you can go to Amazon, Amazon Books, and order a book from Amazon.
There you go.
Okay.
So, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, you got a date. Tony and I going to be over here talking about all kinds of good stuff. Raw talk, divine justice, and Tony's favorite subject,
Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico.
All right, Steve. Thank you so much. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow.
My pleasure. Thank you all for watching. God bless. Have a great day.